Let's be heard. Good afternoon, everyone. The telephone lines are open. The number to call in New Jersey, 201-489 WABC. If you're calling from anywhere else, 212-563 WABC. In a program dedicated to the free and open exchange of ideas and of opinions. And what is on your mind this afternoon? Where do we begin? Should I do a good news, bad news, or bad news, good news story? All right, let's start out that way. Should I give you the good news first or the bad news first? Okay. First, the bad news. Approximately 275 Chinese survived the grounding of their freighter. Now, the good news. At least 7 died trying to reach shore through icy Atlantic waters. Some more bad news. Some 25 escaped and are being sought. These are invaders, ladies and gentlemen. These are people who are invading our shores. It just so happens that this ship ran aground on Long Island, but can you imagine, day in, day out, night in, night out? We have a lot of territory, you know. 2 coastlines, 3 coastlines if you count the Gulf, and why not? A Canadian border that stretches from the Atlantic to the Pacific. A Mexican border that traverses 4 states. Ladies and gentlemen, our borders are porous. Our shorelines are porous. Our airlines are porous. Our airports are porous. We are being invaded by illegals even as we speak. It takes a great toll on a nation. It takes a great toll on our nation. And why, I ask you, why is it that of all the countries in the world, we are the only one that almost seem ashamed to protect our borders? And to add to our pain, our discomfort, to add to the travesty, there have been those Chinese who have said that they wanted to come to the United States because back in their native land, they are permitted only 1 child. So come here and have a half a dozen or 8 or 9 or 10, and the heck with everything else. And this argument that some people put up that, well, listen, if we had rigid laws, our grandparents wouldn't have been able to come here. Back in those days, we needed immigrants. We don't need them anymore. It's time to ring up the gangplank. Even the good book says there is a time for everything. There was a time for immigration. Now there's a time to end immigration, legal and illegal. I'm a voice in the wilderness. I might as well be screaming into the wind. I know that no matter what I say, no matter how well I say it, no matter how often I say it, nothing but nothing will change. We are on the road to a total dissolution of this country as we have known it. In every vestige of life, we can see it. No sooner do they put up very attractive sound baffles on the New Jersey Turnpike. Have you seen those attractive rust-colored baffles? This is to keep the incessant drone of the automobile engines from disturbing the tranquility of the people whose homes abut the turnpike. I knew it was going to happen, and no sooner do those walls go up than they are inundated with the ugly markings of the Goths and the Visigoths, the Vandals, the Hordes. You call it graffiti. Everywhere you look. And now things weren't bad enough on the subways. I'm telling you that at one time you only saw writing in English, and then of course everything became Espanol. Well, now there are 3 languages vying for space. I shouldn't say vying because English is clearly taking a back seat. Now you can find English, Spanish, and Korean. And next year it'll be English, Spanish, Korean, and Chinese. And the year after that, Tagalog. And it goes on and on and on. Do you know who speaks Tagalog? Probably not. Because if you're part of the panoply of the American population, you pride yourself on being unkempt, unwashed, and uninformed. Meanwhile, all the misfits, all the weirdos, and even the people who call themselves queer are having a field day. At 82nd Street and 37th Avenue, in which was once the proud borough of Queens, there was a gay march, a homosexual march, a 15-block parade. They call it Gay Pride Parade. That's like saying, I'm proud that I'm a freak. They painted a lavender line down the middle of 37th Avenue. The only virtue was the rains were somewhat heavy, and by eventide, the velvet, what color would that be? It's almost like a purple. It's their color had melted, had run. But there were hundreds who coursed through Jackson Heights, Queens. And according to a report in one of the newspapers, they were there to demonstrate their political clout and celebrate a lifestyle they say has recently been under attack in the borough and throughout New York City. Well, you misfits, you double-gated oddballs, if you would just mind your business and let us mind our business, there wouldn't be any comment about your lifestyle. But one of the co-chairmen of, one of the co-chairmen of the so-called Gay Pride Committee of Queens says, we're not going to stay low profile anymore. What's it all about? Yeah. And it's very difficult to find a political candidate who has the couillons to stand up to them. Unfortunately, in the political scheme of things, someone wants to be elected mayor, governor, senator, president. He does it like a whore. And that is what politics is, a whore's game. He says, I'll take whatever principles I had, throw them out the window, and tell this group I think they're peachy keen, even though in his heart of hearts he's got to know there's something wrong. Well, one bright spot over the weekend, the victory of Kay Bailey Hutchison to the United States Senate, which does two things. It adds a 44th seat to the Republican side of the United States Senate, and it also sends a very powerful message to Slick Willie, that sleazeball in the White House. It sends a very powerful message, the only kind of message that politicians understand. Meanwhile, the administration continues to unravel, and even a super whore like David Gergen cannot save it. Although he will put a lot of cosmetic twist or spin, which is a word everybody loves. He will put a cosmetic spin on what Slick Willie is doing, but he will not be able to save Slick Willie because Slick Willie cannot save him from himself, and certainly from that most powerful of all Americans, Evita Peron, who in this latest reincarnation is known as Hillary Rodham. Oh, just in passing, I don't find dinosaurs attractive or cute or cuddly. I find them ugly and hideous and revolting. But apparently, as a symptom of how Americans are truly growing uglier, they show an affection for dinosaurs. The only consolation I have for my travail, my mental travail, is that I know that one day Homo sapiens will go the way of the dinosaur. This species, known as Homo sapiens, will not last forever, although our bloated egos make us believe we will. My only regret is that I will not be here to see the demise of the entire species. Now, fortunately or unfortunately for me, most of you don't even understand what I said. Those who do may think I'm awful. But that's the risk one takes when one is just speaking the unvarnished truth. When one sits down and says, this is what I believe, and doesn't try to apply some cosmetics. I think after being around for over 200,000 years, this species, known as Homo sapiens, has proven it doesn't deserve to inherit the earth in perpetuity. It has done nothing but make war on each other. It has done nothing but steal from each other. It has done nothing but lie about each other. We hear the phrase, man's inhumanity to man. Computers haven't changed us. Television hasn't changed us. If anything, there are those who say it's made us worse. But really, it hasn't made us worse. Anybody who's studied history knows that we've always been this base. At any rate, there are a few amongst us who are worthy of accolades, and one such is a man who does a program on WABC every Sunday morning, and I've kidded him and his colleagues, but I want to say a word about Rabbi Joe Potasnik. I had the honor of being asked to speak at his 20th anniversary celebration, 20th anniversary as a rabbi. And underneath the facade, he is a modest man who did not want to be so honored, but succumbed to the importunings of many people. And I enjoyed myself immensely at the Brooklyn Museum, where the event was held, about 500 people there. And Rabbi Potasnik is truly a man for all seasons, truly an ecumenist in the finest sense of the word, a man who transcends a specific religion, and whose outlook is so refreshing, so devoid of narrowness. He is, I think, a marvel. A brilliant young man. Yes, he's still a young man, gifted with a great sense of humor. I was proud to be there. However, upon leaving the Brooklyn Museum, 200 Eastern Parkway, in that section of Brooklyn which abuts Park Slope, you make one wrong turn and you don't know where in heaven's name you are. I thought I might have been in downtown Lagos, McConaugheyville, Monrovia. It's not the same New York, and some people who were in the automobile who remember Eastern Parkway when it was a civilized area, when it was indeed one of the finest areas of Brooklyn, indeed the whole city. They lamented the demise. Their only, shall we say, salve was that if they continued going to 770 and beyond, I'm talking about Eastern Parkway, it would have been even Worse.
Yes, I am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. About those Chinese freeloaders who hit a sand barge yesterday trying to sneak into this country.
Yes.
You know, it is so appropriate that happened on the 25th anniversary of the assassination of Bobby Kennedy. Because, as you know, and a lot of other people know, it was Bobby Kennedy and his leftist brother Teddy who railroaded through the 1965 immigration law that encouraged exactly the sort of thing that happened at Rockaway yesterday. It was Bobby and Teddy who opened the floodgates and let in all these raging hordes from the third world. And in spite of this media hype and hogwash that we're hearing about how Bobby's legacy was his so-called vision and his idealism, baloney. His true legacy has been the near total destruction of this country through massive non-European immigration these last 25 years. Thanks to Bobby and Teddy, those rioting, overbreeding savages from the third world have destroyed just about every major city in this country, and they're well on their way to doing it in the rest of the country, too, in the suburbs. But you know something, Bob? We have a golden opportunity here. With this immigration crisis finally on the front page, this is the time to drive the point home to Slick Willie and to those pandering traitors in Congress that we are fed up. We want an end to all third world immigration because whether they're legal or illegal doesn't matter. Third world countries are made up of third world people, and that's what we are becoming.
Well,
may I give out the subcommittee on immigration? May I give out their number for people?
Absolutely, Connie, absolutely.
Okay, it's area code 202-225-5727. And let them have it right between the eyes. That's all I want.
Why don't you give that phone number again for the people that might not have missed it?
Okay, it's area code 202-225-5727.
Right you are.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. All right, Gloria, you're on WABC. What's on your mind this afternoon?
Yes, Bob. This is regarding the Chinese immigrants in your monologue this morning. This afternoon.
Yes, ma'am.
This morning on the news, I heard that a lot of them are coming over because of mandatory sterilization practices in China.
Well, that's what I said on the opening of my program today.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had to hang up. I had to disconnect a little bit while I changed from the radio to the phone. But my concern is I'm terribly concerned about overpopulation, but at the same time, how do we get the governments and religions and educational systems to deal with this overpopulation thing without mandatory sterilizations and to deal with this issue maybe from that perspective?
Well, look, it's useless to even... Well, we can talk about it, but quite frankly, Gloria, we're not going to get anywhere with it because we don't have enough clout. People are shocked even at the words mandatory sterilization, even though way down deep, the more intelligent ones have to recognize that it's the only possible answer to what faces us, to the demographic extrapolation that faces us. But there's just not the political courage, let alone the political will, to do this, Gloria. So we just have to think in terms of where we go from here. Rochelle, you're on WABC. Hello.
Hi, Mr. Grant. I want to ask you a question, and I'm total seriousness and not facetious. Is there grounds to impeach President Clinton?
No, not really.
And I would make a suggestion that, well, I'll tell you why I asked the question. I just got today the U.S. News and World Report, and I read here a little piece about how he makes his decisions.
Yeah.
And in reality, he's not making decisions. He has to first talk it over with Hillary and with Ira, and I don't know who else he picked. And it seems to me that, forget the fact that I regret very much that I voted for the man. I really regret it. And I don't plan to make the same mistake for City Hall, believe me. But the thing is it's like a crisis. We're lucky that some Arab country hasn't bought a nuclear missile from disintegrating Soviet Union.
Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, as the case may be, Rochelle, he has not committed an impeachable offense. Michael, what's on your mind, Michael?
Hi, good afternoon, Bob. Bob, like yourself, I enthusiastically supported Senator Al D'Amato when he ran last year for senator against Bobby Abrams. And I still like the senator and consider myself a friend of the senator, but I want to offer this respectful suggestion that he should shape up. I was very disappointed to read a few weeks ago in the Daily News that Senator D'Amato was throwing his support to the fanatical, openly lesbian persecutor of the Boy Scouts, Roberta Achtenberg, Clinton and Hillary's darling appointee, and of course some other things that D'Amato did with respect to the gays in the military disappointed me. Now I hope that the Senator D'Amato, and certainly Rudolph Giuliani do not march in the Gay Pride Parade, which comes the end of this month. That parade features contingents like NAMBLA, the North American Man-Boy Love Association, which openly advocates sex with little children and adults, and leather-clad sadomasochistic groups carrying whips and chains and topless lesbians. It's a totally depraved parade, and I certainly hope that Rudy Giuliani's advisors and Senator D'Amato's advisors take note of this and don't have them come out and march in such a parade. I don't think it's going to gain Giuliani and D'Amato many votes. I think it will turn off many, many people who would feel highly incensed about it, and I thought I would make this point, especially since you did bring up that factor about the Queens Gay Pride Parade.
On WABC, it's Rick checking in on the line. Hello, Rick.
Hello, Mr. Grant. This is the first time I've called your show, although I've listened to it for several years, and I generally am in agreement with most of the things you say. I did want to take exception to a remark you passed about the late Senator Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, on Friday when you referred to him as a skunk. I don't think that was called for or very good.
It was called for because I think he was a skunk. And I don't pass remarks, I make remarks.
Well, pass this.
I guess he hung up. Little jerk. Guy, this is the first time I've called the show. I've never called before, and although I agree... What the guy's applying for a job, for heaven's sake? Liz, you're on WABC. Hello.
The news of your coaching Kerry on how to debate months before you knew wall work makes me consider your endorsement of him to be a fake, fraud, and phony one.
Well, you've said that before, Liz.
No, and
why are you
no
so
doubt
upset?
Your political...
Oh, get off the phone, you fake, phony fraud. How dare you? How dare you? I'm sick of her. David, you're on WABC. Hello.
Yes, hello, Bob. Bob, I want to say today that I feel good. I really feel good that I played a small role in the defeat of Lanny Guinier. I called the White House comment line on Thursday morning, and I spoke with the operator there, and I told her that, one of the problems with liberals, and particularly the Clinton administration, is that they're lazy. They don't know the black community. They think that by appointing these ultra-left-wing racist and anti-American haters, that they're doing our community a favor. And they may be in touch with the so-called black leadership, but they certainly are not in touch with the black community. I had her writings read to me, and not only is this individual a racist, but her ideology borders along the lines of being a communist.
Well, she certainly, her views are certainly inimical to the United States of America, to the Constitution, to the Bill of Rights. This woman wants to dismantle everything we have. But I'm not so concerned with her anymore, obviously, for the reason that she's no longer the nominee. What does concern me is what in heaven's name led to A, her nomination in the first place, and B, the convoluted withdrawal of her name in the second place. When we played a recording of Slick Willie announcing on Thursday evening that he was not that he was withdrawing her nomination, he said at the time he nominated her, he had not read her writings. Then he said that he finally just read them again. Now, why did he say again? Nobody questioned him on that. But why did he say, well, we know the answer. I think, David, people who listen to the Bob Grant Show know the answer. And that is that this is what Slick Willie, the big liar, does.
Yeah, I heard that recording. He tripped himself up there.
Okay, thank you, David.
Okay.
Here we go with Marion on the line on WABC. Hello, Marion.
Not Marion, Richard.
Okay, Richard, you're on WABC. What's on your mind?
2 points I'd like to talk about, Mr. Grant. Point one, I was really saddened by one of your callers who called a little while ago, who was screaming about these people from non-European third world countries who are slipping in and ruining the country as we know it today. It's very, very sad to think that people still like that exist with their blatant hatred of anyone who does not look like them. And I do not know what is in their mind. So
well, I'll tell you what's in their mind. What's in their mind is they're sick and tired of university dismantling Western culture courses. They're sick and tired of these people coming in and diluting the life of all Americans. They're sick and tired of being told that because they're from Europe, there's something wrong with them. You talk about people like you talk about hatred as though it comes only from them to you.
No,
and it does go both ways.
There is hatred in both ways.
Okay, good. Thank you. On WABC, let's say hello to Chuck. Chuck, what's on your mind?
Yeah, Bob, I'd like to add something to Slicky Will. I believe that he is the biggest phony that ever stepped foot in the White House. Him and his wife, Hillary Rotten. I'll tell you, I'm very disappointed.
Yeah, what? That's it?
That's it.
All right, thank you. Yes, hello, Sal.
Good afternoon, Mr. Grant. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and your vast audience. Not to get sidetracked, but I just wanted to make a statement, relating to Mr. Guerin's, David Guerin's appointment by Hillary Clinton.
What did you call him?
Hillary.
No. What did you call the gentleman?
Gergen?
David who?
Gergen. That's his proper name?
Hey, look, it's very simple. Gergen. Gergen.
Gergen, right. He's a rubber stamp of Hillary. Not to get sidetracked. I'm a registered Republican, proud to say so, and I was contemplating on getting involved with Mr. Giuliani's campaign because I made a big mistake the last time. I didn't only give him lip service. But he came out and he made what I think was a bold statement as far as the sodomites and him trying to push the state Republicans to get that legislation passed through favoring gay rights. And I'm a little perplexed on what I should do as far as getting involved because I feel like the rug has been pulled out for me. And I know his campaign monitors all the radio stations, so this is pretty much a statement to them also.
Well, I think you're foolish, and the reason I say that is this. I'm opposed to endorsing that legislation in Albany, and I'm opposed to giving homosexuals special rights as though somehow or other having a perverted sexual compulsion makes you a special category. I'm opposed to that. However, we have a mayoral race in this city in which the vote of the homosexual community will be very crucial. Now, if he were to abjure that element, if he were to eschew any possibility of tapping into that potential vote, he would be a very foolish individual. If you don't get elected, what the hell difference does it make? Then there are people like you, Sal, who have a very narrow vision. Right. And because you have a narrow vision, you say, well, I don't like the fact that he's prodded the legislature to vote for the gay rights bill. Therefore, the heck with him. Fine. Then what are you left with? You want 4 more years of David Dinkins?
I think you just answered my question.
Okay, thank you.
That's what I called for.
Thank you. Who, until today, was a teacher at William Taft High School in the South Bronx. She says she resigned because of the violence, the drugs, and the truancy. You've been a teacher for 7 years and 8 months at Taft, but you just couldn't stand it any longer. Is that what happened?
No, actually, I've been a teacher at Taft since September. I have totally been a teacher for 7 years. I've taught in Long Island, Beach General High School in Rockaway, and I just started at Taft because my husband and I had moved. So I transferred to Taft High School in September.
And was it a nightmare from day one?
Well, the first impression, of course, is one of fear, actually, because Taft High School is right off of Jerome Avenue. It's a very, very tough area. And after you adjust to the idea that you have truly a reason to be frightened, you then start to take a look at what's around you. And from the time I was there in September, various incidents would occur, and they just kept on adding up as I went on. Finally, last week, I just couldn't take it any longer, and so I've left. I've resigned. I sent my resignation last week, and they probably received it today.
How did the columnist Ray Carrison come to know of your story?
Okay, well, actually, last November, I had written a piece myself. I'm a writing teacher. I had tried to get in touch with the New York Times, and the Times kind of, ignored my story.
Oh, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
They either ignored your story or they accepted.
No, they ignored my story. I spoke with them on the phone as well. The violence and the shooting is something that I think the journalists are aware of, but not to the extent of what I've seen at Taft. I stayed at Taft, and when shootings started to occur, on May 3rd, we had 3 shootings. I finally called the New York Post. I told them we had 3 people shot right outside of the building at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And I told them to check it out. They did, but the next day in the paper, they must have been given wrong information because the paper reported that the shooting occurred a block and a half away at a pizza shop. That was incorrect. I called back and I told them they were getting wrong information to go and ask the kids, because the kids are the ones who will never lie. They generally will always be the ones who tell the truth. And 5 days later, a week later, on May 10th, 2 more people were shot right by my car, about 100 yards away from where my car was, on the school grounds once again. That was not reported, and nothing was done in the school. There was no mention of the children who were shot.
Could you stop just a moment? You say that was not reported. Not reported to whom?
That was not reported to the paper by anyone. I called the school back up and told them 2 more people were shot. And I imagine what the papers do is they call the school to check this out. However, I never saw that in the newspapers. At that point, I went to Mr. Carrison.
Excuse, I really don't want to interrupt you, but I must ask you, you mean to say this was not even reported to the precinct?
I would imagine it had to have been reported to the precinct because the police were there.
Oh, okay.
Okay, police had to come because people were shot. One particular student on May 3rd was shot in the stomach, so obviously people had to come and take them to the hospital. What I'm trying to say, however, is that it wasn't reported accurately in the press. And when I had asked people if they had called the newspapers or anything was being done about it, teachers and staff there, security guards, kind of said no, nothing was being done, and that's when I decided I was going to have to get out of there. I was going to try and stay till June, but I was not able to.
There's not even a pretense at education, is there?
Well, actually, I don't know if I would say that. When you educate, there are classes, particularly classes, they're ESL classes, where the students are into this country, and they're very fresh in this country, and they're taught generally in Spanish. And those students generally are the well-behaved ones, where I believe education probably is going on. I am an English teacher. I do not speak Spanish, so I was in a mainstream. And yes, I did make certain connections with the students. The students many of them are very good kids. However, it seems that the violence that's in the streets is spewing over into the school.
Whose idea was it not to even have an American flag there nor recite the Pledge of Allegiance? Whose idea was that?
I have no idea. Way back in December, I started to ask people why there was an absence of an American flag. I had taught in Beach Channel High School in Rockaway for 3 years, and of course every classroom had an American flag. I noticed it, and people said, gee, I don't know, we were renovating, and I guess we never got them back up. I looked throughout every entire classroom. There wasn't one. The principal's office didn't have one. In January, they had a graduation, and one flag was then hung in the auditorium, in my opinion, in a very disrespectful fashion. What made me kind of really get crazy, however, was in February when we had an assembly, and I was asked to stand to a black national anthem.
Wait a minute. Stop right there. What offended you was what?
We had an assembly. Of course, February is Black History Month, as you well know. We were asked to stand, and the students as well, to a black national anthem.
A black national anthem.
Now, at this particular point, I wrote a letter in March. At first, I'd spoken to my union leaders and people at the school, and yes, they were upset about it, but people don't seem to do anything.
They're afraid, that's why.
Well, I wrote a letter on March 24th to my principal, and sent a copy to my union, my chapter leader, asking why, in fact, I was. And I had made it clear, and I want to make it clear, I would be more than happy to do that. I respect all
right, okay,
cultures.
we know.
Yeah.
You're a nice person. You're not prejudiced. We know. Like all good white folk, you're on the defensive. That's okay. But
well, actually,
it's a given that you are not a racist or a bigot. It's a given. But are you telling us that all the while you were there, you never recall the national anthem of the United States of America being played?
Absolutely not. Never. Never once.
But in February, they had this so-called black national anthem, and you were required to stand for that?
Well, we were asked to. The students didn't really oblige with that too readily either. The students are actually just confused about all of this, as far as I can see. It was when I wrote the letter to my principal and I complained about it and asked for an answer when I didn't get one that I really started to burn. But the final incident that made me resign was the shootings that occurred in May, and when nothing was done. It's a blatant lack of respect for human life, as far as I can see. I just don't feel safe there. And I could go so far as to say that perhaps, yes, indeed, you don't feel, you're not protected by your flag because you don't feel like you're in the United States of America when you're there.
And it virtually is not the United States of America. The question is, what country is it? It's no country, no man's land. Anytime you ever have to remonstrate with a student, and if so, did you? At any time, did you ever have to chide a student, discipline a student?
Yes, there would be times. Generally, for teachers who work in the inner city schools, if you know what you're doing, you don't get yourself into confrontations. Basically, what you try and do is, because it can be very dangerous. I generally am not a person who has problems with discipline. I never wrote one referral in the South Bronx. The kids really and truly are not the problem, as far as I can see, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, then what is the problem? Who are the problem makers?
Well, I think that in this particular school, I don't know what the agenda is. I sense very strongly there is one, however. There are people who are, for example, trying to... there's a lot of teachers there, for example, who are not tenured, and I think that's part of the agenda. The teachers who are tenured don't tend to get up and speak out because I think they're probably just afraid. The fear of the area seems to infiltrate everybody there. But there's a lot of teachers, for example, right now in that school who are not tenured. And so what I've seen in this school is a school without a union. There's no union at all. And I think that that's what everybody seems to like, because when you don't have a union, you can tell people what to do. And that's when in the beginning, what I first noticed was people were trying to tell me what to teach, how to teach what I happen to know, English literature. The beauty of teaching is that you bring your own style and you try to allow the students to find their own truths and to come to their own conclusions. But that's not what I saw here. I saw a lot of people trying to throw at you, teach it this way, do it this way, and immediately that's what started to make my head turn. I couldn't quite understand that. You want to be able to bring your own thoughts to a classroom, but always let the children make up their own minds. That's what education is, in my opinion. And that immediately is what I didn't see happening. And when you have a building with people who are not tenured, they're going to do whatever you tell them to do, especially in this economy. People aren't going to walk away from a job that easily. And that's what's going on in that school. There's no union at all.
Well, you escaped with your life.
And my self-respect. My self-respect, at this, which is very important to me. I wrestled over this a lot. When I saw the kids shot like flies right outside a building, to make it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon, kids are outside, a car came by, arm pulls out, and 8 shots were fired. 3 kids dropped. Now, one teacher was teaching her class. The kids were looking out the window. She saw one of the students who was shot was cutting her class. And when I mentioned it to one of the teachers in the cafeteria, I said, the student was cutting her class. The teacher said to me, well, if the student wasn't cutting, he wouldn't have been shot. Don't you see, it's the student's fault. And I said, this is ridiculous. In America, this doesn't happen. Kids don't get shot in the streets. And I started, it's a very contaminating element, the fear. And so this finally is why I decided to go to Mr. Harrison, because I had a feeling I'd have a shot that he'd tell my story in terms of what's going on, at least in that school. And I've been in 3 schools that I've taught in my career. I'm 42 years old. I'm an older woman, so I think I have more than just a profession at stake. I have 4 children that have to be brought up in this world.
Well, I certainly, you said you got out with your self-respect. You have my respect as well, and I'm sure the people listening to this conversation on WABC right now feel the same way.
Well, I thank you very much for that. That's very nice of you to say that.
Well, good luck, Dolores Sullivan. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
There you see, a dedicated teacher, a professional teacher, an excellent teacher, and she's lost to the school system because she can't teach in that atmosphere, because that atmosphere is a third world jungle. By the way, the population, I'm sure, as you probably have gathered, was totally black and Hispanic. And she says there were times when she would be teaching to only a couple of students at a time because of the truancy.
And during my period of student teaching, my first day, I found 2 students in the hallway in the act of sexual intercourse. And my attempt...
Oh, wait a minute. Stop right there. What did you see?
2 students in the hallway in the act of sexual intercourse.
In the hallway?
Yes, inside of a public school.
And where were the other students?
Well, most of the students were in the class at this time.
Most of them?
Yes.
Apparently, these 2 students didn't care if anybody saw them?
They didn't see me as I was approaching the class.
I see.
All right, because as a student teacher, you get your assignments from the office, and by the time you get to your room, the class is supposed to already be in progress. But at any rate, in my attempt to bring an end to this situation, the young man went into a kind of a tantrum. And
went into a tantrum over
yes.
what?
He attacked me, and
why?
He ran out of the building and came back with a gun. And because he made the threat before he left, naturally I called the police, and they were waiting for him when he got back. And of course he had to be restrained. And then the father wanted to come up to the school and kill me. I went back to the professor, who assigned me to that school. When I got back to class the next day, as a matter of fact, he asked all of the students, how was your first day at student teaching? And I told him it was a zoo. And he got upset with me, for responding in that manner. I live right next to the Bronx Zoo, and I'd rather be there all day. Now, it's heartbreaking, but I want to say that the teacher who spoke before, her commitment to her sense of what youth is supposed to be is what caused her to soft pedal it in the way that she did. It's worse than what she has indicated that it is. This is massive. And in addition to that, it is also hopeless. You cannot organize shapeless minds in such a way that they can be educated. There has been no discipline in the lives of these children from the time of their birth. And the only structure and order that they have is that which produces chaos. An order that produces chaos. And any attempt to interfere with that brings a totally violent reaction. Now, people in higher places know this, and they also know that The schools are just buildings for containment at this particular time because they have nowhere else to put them. Education is the farthest thing from anybody's mind. The only thing that can bring a stop to this and provide any glimmer of hope for maybe 10% of these youth would be the National Guard taking control of these buildings. Because where there is no incentive for the enlightened mind, and there is no drive for study, and there is no respect for solid knowledge on the parts of the parents, it is a kind of a madhouse that's being perpetuated here. And those persons who understand this are handcuffed, and the impact of its vastness causes the kind of response that we heard from the teacher who spoke a little while ago. Maybe because I come from the same community, that is the black community, I don't feel as she does in terms of my response to being stunned by it. But I've placed myself on a number of occasions in life-threatening situations, and I've decided that I wasn't going to do that anymore. So I've returned to graduate school, preparing myself to teach at the college level. But the only way anybody's going to be able to do anything about this is to send the National Guard and have them run the schools.
Now, you have identified yourself as a black American.
Yes.
Correct? Yes.